So, we're standing in England, on the border between England and Wales, and this is the first walk I've ever decided to record. I've just seen a bat. We can hear the dawn chorus. What I'm intending to do is to walk all the way across Wales, that is from east to west, so at its shortest point, which is roughly, at the very shortest, 43 miles, although because of the route I'm going to take it will actually be 46. I've never really recorded my walks before, and I just thought it'd be fun to try this one. As I say, it's just before dawn. It's about probably about 4:05, something like that. It's perfectly light on the ground, although you can't see that on the camera yet. I'm going to set out and we'll see what we will see. As soon as it gets lighter, I will film some more. So this bit where you can hear the river is the border. You probably can't see anything. No, it's a bit too dark at the moment, although my eyes can see it perfectly well. It's light enough to see now, and we're standing above a place called Velindre, which is in Wales. I had my first little difficulty and I went off course, and I had to get over a river, which you can probably hear in the background, but we're now back on course. So we've just passed our first real obstacle, which was Rhuvaid Farm, and there were quite a lot of dogs in the yard, but they were all locked up except for the old one, so there wasn't any real bother. It's about half an hour after official dawn, which is sort of down there, slightly pink in the sky, but you can't see very much. And I've just stopped for a drink, so I go up this road, past those trees, and onto a road. Well, this isn't a road, this is a track, but onto a proper road for a bit, be a few miles. So this is the first dry bit of track. It's all been wet grass up until now, and it's quite nice to be not wading through knee-deep wet grass. Of course, this time of day you'll be getting a lot of dew, and it's been very wet in the last few days, so I'm not expecting to keep dry feet for very long. It seems rather magnificent. It's probably not easy to see anything other than a road and a sort of pale blue haze, but anyway, we're walking down this little road. I'll stop and show you the view properly. Just rather lovely. Right in the middle of nowhere. This is what I called on Google Earth the endless road. It goes on and on and on. I haven't seen a moving vehicle yet at all anywhere, but then some of the time I've been off the road. This is probably the longest actual piece of road that I'm going to walk down for quite a few hours. It's a bit boring, but it's getting us there at about 3 miles an hour, which is what I need to be able to do, because I'm probably doing 2 miles an hour or less in country. When I get to the Hithywel, which is a hill, I probably will be doing about 1 mile an hour. So I have to do quite a few of these bits where I walk fairly fast. So let's have a look around. You see behind me, all the way around, it's pretty bleak, and you can see what I'm going towards, which is behind me again. It's starting to look cloudy, which I was not planning on. I was thinking it would be a dry day. I didn't actually think that it would be misty over the top, but we shall see. So we're just walking down the road. As I say, this is the endless road, and what we're heading towards is up there, and that is misty. So we shall see. I might avoid it. I might be going a bit lower than that, but That's the highest point. But I think it's as high as the other highest point I go on. I've got two high points. That one, Hillerwell, and then the other one is Ger Ikion. And then after that it's kind of medium and going down towards Aberystwyth. I'm sure there'll be some ups and downs, but that's the way it goes. So this is Croughran. It's my first rest point, so I'm having a cup of coke. Can, of course. And I cross the main road here, but it's the first one in about, well, it's the first proper road that I will have crossed at all. And I'm only going literally sort of just a zigzag across it, and then I go back down farm track sort of roads. And then I go along a track road that kind of comes to an end on the top of a hill, which is called the Hirethwell. If I ever pronounce that, I don't know. Anyway, so there's the main road. And I've planned on this walk to do proper breaks, so I'm going to sit for 10 minutes here. So I've had a couple of drinks before, but I haven't had any breaks yet. This is the first one. I'm sitting on a grit bin, which is nice and dry, very conveniently situated for me, and I saw that on Google Earth, so, you know, a bit of planet foresight and planning is always worth doing. This walk started as an idea after I'd finished my complete circumnavigation of Wales in July 2015. The straight line distance from Clun to Aberystwyth is 45 miles. I decided I wanted to walk the whole of the way across Wales from east to west in one day, and in order to make that a theoretical possibility, I decided to start at the Welsh border rather than at Clun. This takes about 8 miles off the straight line distance, making it about 37 miles, which ends up as a walking distance of 46 miles, rendering the distance practical in 24 hours. I also revised the heading of my walk to be due west of my starting point at Velindre. This ends up on the pier at Aberystwyth. The walk I eventually devised remained within a mile or so of this line, and mostly to the south, and this is about as direct as the terrain allows. I made a point of avoiding roads, especially major ones, and taking footpaths wherever possible. I plotted the route onto my GPS, a technique which minimises the need to refer to a paper map, because the GPS beeps a confirmation whenever I cross points I've already plotted. This gives me great confidence, especially when tackling a route of this length. I suppose I haven't shown you too many of these. There have been loads of sheep on the way. You see the fields and fields and fields of sheep all over the place. Okay, so it's getting pretty remote now. This valley's got a road, but the road just goes to nothing, and then I have to go over the pass across the Hirethwell. There's some friends of mine here. So this road just becomes a track down here. I don't think there's any buildings either. There's nothing here, it's just farmland. Okay, so here's a problem I hadn't really expected, and I think looking at Google Earth, this didn't seem to be anything. But of course, we've had a lot of rain in the last couple of days. So, bit of stepping stones. See if I get wet. Seems alright. Did have a wobbly stone, but hey, can't have everything. You can actually go in, and that's the main thing. So I've come down off a very short piece of bog, probably about a quarter of a mile, crossed a little stream, you can just about see, but the thing we're going to do now is cross this barbed wire fence. Now you can see I've got some pipe insulation here, which means that I find a good step, so the post is a solid one, so I can get up quite easily and then swing my leg over without catching it on the barbed wire, which is a really cool thing to be able to do. Right, so we're pretty much at the top of Hill of the Well. Wish I knew how to exactly say it, I've not heard a local say it. So you can see this big wind farm, and if I haven't said this before, it is one of the biggest wind farms in Britain on land, 53 gigawatts. So I've come from this direction, and as you will see, there's no path. I'm following the fence line here because this little bit for about a quarter of a mile has no path. I've been up until about 5 minutes ago I was on a path. I just quickly pan round, and just in the distance I can see the next range of hills, and that's where I'm going next, and that one is the next biggest. I've got a lunch break at Llangwrig at around about 12, which is off in the distance there. So in order to do this trackless waste, I'm following my plot exactly. So I've done this by looking at what the best options are on the map. I know that I've got to get round a little bit of bog here, so I've got a zigzag. I'm kind of walking that way, probably a little bit high. And what I was looking at here was the contours, so I've kind of gone round to the end of the dip, which is kind of somewhere here, getting a bit there, close to it, and then I'm going to zigzag back to where those sheep are. Probably do it a bit straight in that now. So by following my plot, what I've done is I've got to a track, seems to be kind of fairly wide. I'm slightly to one side of what's actually marked on my plot, but I'm doing this from fairly scant information. So I'm getting quite close to where I want to be, and I'm certainly not lost or anything like that. In fact, following this has got me over this bit where there isn't really anything on the map that says that there's a right of way or a footpath. So you can see over there the kind of country I'm coming into. So now I'm back to a legitimate right of way going along up there. So I probably had half a mile or less of ambiguous. It wasn't really, there were tracks, but it wasn't actually all right of way. But I wanted to connect it because I wanted to get to the other side of this hill, and this is about the straightest line I can make to Aberystwyth from Felindre. I've arrived at Felingyrtos. Don't even know how to say the Gyrtos bit, but this is a church in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing here. There's hardly any houses, just the odd one. And I was due to get here at 11 o'clock, and it's 9:28. I'm going to have a half-hour rest, so I'll leave at 10. So by that count, I'm about an hour ahead of schedule. However, although I have no injuries or anything like that, my feet are wet. This usually leads to blisters. Now I've got spare socks, so I'm going to try changing them, and I'm just wondering whether to change them at Llangwrig, which is in 7 miles time, not so many heavy climbs by the way, or whether to change them now. It's difficult. thing is I don't want to get blisters, and one of the ways you get blisters is to have wet feet. And that of course is crossing the Hedd Uel was a bog basically. I knew that anyway, but sometimes you can get away with it and sometimes you can't, and this time, because it had been so wet, I didn't really get away with it. Places like this are too difficult to get to by car, and that's what I like about this kind of pre-plotted route. It gets you into out of the way places. It's a place you can come to if you want to get to Llangerrig, to Llanidloes directly from Rhaeadr, but I wouldn't suggest you try it at night. It's a pretty twisty little old road, and I think it's the A470 is actually a better road, but it's interesting. It's an interesting road. This is the worst bit just through here for driving, and I suggest if you do drive along here, you actually make sure your car is in good condition, and if you do it at night, which I think is probably not a good idea, but if you did do it at night, make sure you got one of those cars with lights that light up when you steer, because it's very twisty. As you can see, it's not used that much, this road, but it is a way. After flogging up a hill, which I could have avoided if I'd used the road, I found this. I presume the Quakers weren't allowed to bury their dead in town. We're in Llangerrig, and just had a lunch there. This is about halfway. Feeling quite knackered at the moment. I'm not sure whether it's because I'm tired because I haven't had a lot of sleep since I got up at 3:30 this morning, or whether it's just the walk. I mean, the walk's going to make some difference, but hey, we're halfway. Sun's out. It's quite nice, really. This bit I'm going to walk along is the only bit where I have to walk along the main A road. It's only about half a mile. Quite a lot of it's paved, so we'll see how that works out. Just turn it around. This is the main Aberystwyth road, so it's quite busy, and this is the only place really I've seen cars at all. I think I've seen up to now, apart from when I encountered this road, I crossed it, and I've seen one car, which is pretty good, but it was pretty early in the morning. So this is the start of Ysger Uchion, or Ichion, which I believe means Ox Bridge in Welsh. And it's basically a big forestry plantation. And I'm going to have a drink here. I'm no athlete, and I wonder why I set myself these challenges. I think it's because I like trying things that might be possible, but that I might not succeed at any time soon. If the objective is sufficiently far away, I just have to deal with the immediate task in hand, knowing that in my mind, if I string enough tasks together, eventually I will get there. I'm extremely patient and persistent, For me, this is a mental puzzle, a bit like playing Patience or doing a crossword, and it keeps me fitter than lying on the sofa. We're at the top of Bank of East Malware. Did you see those hares running along the track? Which has got loads of windmills on, which we'll get closer to before we film them. But this is nearly 1,800 foot, and it's the last big hill really before we get to the coast. Even though we can see some hills there, I don't think we go over them. We'll sort of go round them. So there's still some climbing to do because we're going to go down and then up. That's what power sounds like. I've just come down stuff like this. It's absolutely the most lethal stuff. I think I need congratulating in that I didn't actually injure myself, but it's just, I don't think it was the right decision to come down that side. The way I did before, although it was wetter and dodgier in a different way, actually I was very lucky there that I didn't actually break something or fall through and not be able to get out. But I was careful, I used sticks, and the sticks made a lot of difference. This is called Blind Meirin. It's a very difficult valley to get into. I think there's only one way in, and that's at the front end in the direction we're travelling now. I think there is a legitimate footpath, but it wasn't really very useful for me. So I did this thing of going across the wind farm. I'm not sure whether that was a great idea, but I've done it, and that's all there is to it. Avon Rheidol is a very steep gorge. The track out, even though it's a properly marked right of way, was more like a badger track than a footpath. Okay, so this is where my walk was supposed to end, but it did actually end in me failing to do the distance. I think that I walked about 35 miles and then ran out of light. Now, when I planned my walk, I realised that the last part would be dark, but what I hadn't realised that basically my timings were out by about 2 hours, and the place where I copped out of the walk was where the country was just too dodgy and difficult to try in the dark. I think if I'd been the 2 hours earlier in my schedule, I would have probably managed it, because those last 10 miles would have been done on minor roads, most of it paved, and I would have been okay. Now, the thing I'm pleased about is that my body held up. Okay, I'm 66, and I think that walking about 35 miles, which is what I did, is pretty good. Also, I've got no blisters, no injuries, and I wasn't giving up because I was too knackered. I was quite knackered, but I wasn't too knackered to finish the thing. But even on almost the longest day of the year, in the end, it was just too much. And part of the reason for that, I think, is that it was the terrain I was walking across was so rough that, especially towards the end, there was some really serious steep climbs, and also there were two bits which I knew about where there was actually no real path, but I decided I'd try and tackle those anyway. very interesting problems, but of course in the end they slow you down. So what happened was I got to this place and I realised I was going to walk across quite tough country on very small paths that probably used by very few people, and I decided to go to plan B, which was to get to the main road at Pontywydd and then get a taxi, which is what I did. And so the lesson I have learned from all of this is I'm pretty tough, but I'm probably a bit slower than I might have been if I was 25 and about 2 stone lighter. I might have made it in that case, but then my mind probably wouldn't have been up to it. So it's all in the mind in the end, folks. One of the things I think I've refined quite well is equipment. I was wearing quite good clothing, made of artificial fibres, very lightweight but windproof trousers and top. And I also had a wicking layer, which was very kindly given to me by Pauline's mum. This worked really well. There were quite a wide variation in temperatures yesterday, and that depended quite a lot on altitude. And both in the cool, especially around about 4:30 in the morning, it was perfectly adequate, and it was also all right around about late midday when the sun came out and it got quite hot. It works really well. The other thing I found was that most of the walk was that my feet were actually wet. In other words, my boots, although comfortable, were not waterproof. This is a thing that is very difficult for me to resolve because the kinds of boots I need have to fit a slightly strange shape of feet, which are wide and short. And anyway, so they got wet, but when I got to Llangerrig, I went into a shop and bought some ladies, was it Always panty pads, and stuffed them in my boots, and they really worked. They sucked the water out of the boots. I dried my feet off, which I'd already planned to do with a yellow duster, which is pretty effective. And I was also carrying spare socks, so my feet held out really well. One of the problems I did have was that, especially in the mountainy bits, of which there were a lot, but especially in those, it had a real problem with midges. Now the problem with midges wasn't when I was walking along; they didn't touch me then. But when I had to stop and actually do stuff, there's hundreds and thousands of these really minute little midges, and they were really bothering me. In the end, in order to change my socks for the second time, I resorted to putting a plastic bag over my head and neck and tying it so that I could just see out of it, because I just couldn't concentrate. They were such pesky little things. However, I know that got resolved, and I carried on. I also had made some caches of drinks when I came and tested the route, and that was a good idea, because I was carrying, the main weight I was carrying was liquid, and I managed to stay hydrated properly throughout the walk. That means you don't get exhausted or depressed, because if you get dehydrated, it's a strange thing, you get depressed as well. Yeah, what else could? Oh yes. When I got to the point where I had to walk off the road, sort of walk off on the road to get back to Pontywydd, and by the way, I had researched it. I knew that there was a hotel I could go to do the phoning for the taxi. It was pretty much dark on the road. There was enough light to just about see by, but I had bought these little flashing lights, cycle lights, in Hawkins in Thornbury, and they were great. I had a red one at the back on my rucksack and a white one in the front, and I also had yellow armbands, so I don't think there was any possibility of any cars hitting me, although actually, to be honest, I saw very few.